Hi, I'm Maggie.
And I'm Marin, and you're listening to Girlhood Movie Database, a podcast where we deconstruct and muse on depictions of girlhood in film, literature, and other media.
A feminist celebration of pop culture, the audacity of youth, and the ways we grow away from and into our bodies, beliefs, and dreams for ourselves and each other.
And today we are discussing
Valley Girl.
Valley Girl. Can you do a Valley Girl voice?
I don't know.
Do you want to?
I think that
I do not trust my acting skills enough to be able to do one.
I can't do accents, really, not on purpose. I think that sometimes I maybe have speaking habits that are reminiscent of a Valley Girl. My students do make fun of me sometimes for the things I say or the way I say things, and have used the term Valley Girl to describe the way I talk.
Interesting.
Yeah. And I'm like, I don't think you guys know entirely what that means.
Yeah.
But because I definitely didn't grow up on the West Coast.
Right. Yes, me neither. When I was watching this movie, this was not my first time watching this movie, but when I was rewatching it for this episode, I initially started keeping a tally of how many times they said bitchin', and then I lost count. But they say it a lot. There are other words that they say a lot too, but that one stood out to me.
The language is so fun.
It's really fun.
Yeah.
In case you were confused, we're talking about Valley Girl, directed by Martha Coolidge, released April 29th, 1983. Not the remake of this movie that was released in the bowels of 2020, I think in the middle of COVID. Did you know they remade this movie?
I didn't know.
I remember hearing about this and then it just sort of being released and forgotten, like sent into the direct to streaming ether or whatever. And at first I just assumed it was because of COVID. But then I was reading about it in preparation for this episode, and apparently it was supposed to come out in 2018 or 2019. But then it got delayed by the studio because one of the people in this movie is Jake Paul.
I don't know if I know who this is.
You don't. God bless you. He's a terrible. He was a YouTuber. He still is, and now he does MMA fighting or something. But he's terrible. Everything you can think of wrong with the current state of American masculinity that's him.
Mm.
He was in it because I guess he was trying to branch into acting, and he was embroiled in some controversy at the time, so they temporarily shelved it.
Wait, I want to look up a picture of him.
They didn't want the bad PR, and then COVID happened, and they're like, okay, let's just dump it. And that's what happened. I think it was Jake Paul. He also has a brother named Logan who's similarly embroiled in controversies, biggest of which was going to that forest in Japan where a lot of people have killed themselves there. He went there and in his footage included a photo of a dead body and then uploaded it to YouTube.
Cool.
And people were like, hey, that was really disrespectful and fucked up. And now he has a podcast. So
apparently it's Logan Paul that was in the movie.
Oh, it's Logan Paul? Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe this was around the time he did that. I don't know. They've both had all kinds of controversies. Jake Paul fake married Tana Mojo. You know who Tana Mojo is? Okay. Our generational difference is perhaps showing a little bit. They're just terrible social media person. Actually, I don't know what Tana's up to anymore. Maybe she's grown. But yeah, in 2018, they fake married.
Why?
Because they wanted to do a pay-per-view live stream of it so their fans would pay to watch it.
What? Oh, damn it. I'm also just really bad with names.
Yeah.
I've got to really care about you as an artist or a performer to know your name.
That's good. You're saving. You don't have the disease that I have.
Oh my God.
But yeah, so they remade this movie in 2020. I believe it was also a musical when they remade it, which you would love because you famously love musicals.
Oh my God. What?
So we're not talking about that movie, even though I just spent 5 minutes talking about it.
I've got to watch it now.
I think it's free on YouTube at this moment,
I would imagine.
just like the original one is.
Entirely tangential, but I just found out that all the Pitch Perfect movies are free on YouTube, which I'm not like a big fan of or anything. It's just, it made me feel old. My students really wanted to my seniors really wanted to watch a movie the other day while we were doing something else. They wanted me to put a movie on. They're like, put it on Pitch Perfect. It's free on YouTube. And I was like, has it been that long?
The kids know about Pitch Perfect.
They love it.
I think that movie came out when I was in 7th or 8th grade, and I loved it.
Yeah.
Perhaps no other cultural artifact bears its 2010s-ness, early 2010s-ness, the way that movie does.
Yeah. I mean, I loved it when it came out too, because I was like the age of those actors. Anyway.
A movie that is destined to be covered on this podcast one day. Also.
Yeah. Well, and now it's free to watch. So,
I mean, if you know the right places, everything can be free to watch.
that's true.
Valley Girl, directed by Martha Coolidge, who has had a pretty prolific career. She was the first female president of the Directors Guild of America, which is a big deal. And her first movie was a documentary called Not a Pretty Picture. And then she directed this. I believe this is her first narrative feature. And then she directed a movie called Rambling Rose with Laura Dern that got a bunch of Oscar nominations, like a small independent film that broke out in the Oscars. And then she also directed, one of the other films she directed was a DVD classic in my house growing up, starring Julia Stiles, The Prince and Me. Do you know that movie?
Mm-hmm.
Not good. But we love and respect Julia Stiles.
Yeah.
And this movie was written by two guys named Wayne Crawford and Andrew Lane. This film was released April 29th, 1983. And for our poster tagline, I love this tagline. Might be my favorite one so far in the history of this podcast. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
She's cool. He's hot. She's from the valley. He's not.
I love that.
I love it too.
I knew that it was going to rhyme too by the time you got to, yeah. That's so fun. See,
I know. It's so fun. And the poster of this movie stars Nicolas Cage. It is his first leading film role. And he's wearing a vest with no shirt underneath it and a tie. And unfortunately, he does not actually wear that outfit in the movie. But just immediately that energy, and the actress who plays, her name is Deborah Foreman, who plays the main character, Julie. She's got a headband wrapped around her forehead. And I think she has cowgirl boots on. It's amazing.
It's so of its time in a really beautiful way. And I guess we'll talk more about this maybe, but Nicolas Cage in this film, I love so much because you can see little moments of who he is to become as an actor. And it like just comes out sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah. I think he is incredibly endearing in this movie.
I agree.
I have a logline for you that I would like you to read. Please and thank you.
Julie's friends find her new love to be grody to the max, leaving her caught up in a culture clash between her valley lifestyle and her punk hunk. And this logline comes from Tubi, the People streamer, which is where I watched this. Yeah. Julie's friends find her new love to be grody to the max. The word grody, I remember we were still saying that in the 90s. It was a cool thing to say when I was a kid. Grody to the max, so fun. Punk hunk. Come on. What I love about the rhyming is it does feel very camp, but I think it's also a nod to its this film's Shakespearean roots.
Yes, this film is a very, very loose,
but noticeable
adaptation of Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah. The only reason I know that is because as I was watching, I was like, is this meant to be? Mm-hmm. And I looked it up. So I think that it is, while it is very loose, like it holds something of its source text that you can recognize.
Yeah. Plus, there's a scene, that beautiful montage in the middle. Oh, I love it so much. And one of the glimpses is them in front of a marquee that has Romeo and Juliet in the background. Yeah. Okay. For a brief synopsis of this film, we open with our main heroine, a high schooler named Julie, played by an actress named Deborah Foreman, who it seems retired a while ago. She is living in the San Fernando Valley. She has a close group of girlfriends and an absolute dipshit boyfriend named Tommy, who all her friends are like, he's so hot. And
that was really good.
It was?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I'm never going to be able to replicate it.
It was perfect. It was spot on.
It wasn't even trying.
Oh my God.
Anyways, reader, he was not hot. That's my 2 cents. And he's an asshole. More importantly, he's a fucking asshole. And Julie tells him that she is like totally not in love with him anymore and dumps him at the beginning of the movie. And her friends don't really understand this decision because, again, they think he's totally hot. And one night, Julie is at a party and these 2 punk guys who live in Hollywood, which is apparently a total shithole according to these girls. I know nothing about LA geography, but these 2 dudes from Hollywood showed up. One of them is Randy, who is played by Nicolas Cage. And Randy didn't really want to go to this party, but his friend talked him into it. He thought this party's going to be lame because he's like, we aren't going to fit in the valley. What are we doing there? But his friend overheard Julie and her friends talking about this party at the beach. And he's like, if we go, there will be chicks there. So we should go. And at this party, Randy and Julie lock eyes from across the room. And they are smitten. And it's genuinely really cute to watch when they just lock eyes at this party and are smiling at each other and are taking turns glancing at each other. It's so cute to me. And they leave this party together eventually. They go to a club and they listen to music and they dance and they're out all night. And they have this whirlwind courtship that it comes across as very sweet and very silly. But Randy is not from the valley, like we have established. And Julie's friends do not like that. And her gross ex-boyfriend is still trying to win her back. And they're all trying to get her to break up with Randy, and she feels very conflicted. So, will she follow her heart and stand by Randy, or will she capitulate to social pressure? You've got to watch the rest to find out. But in short answer, she first capitulates to social pressure, and then she changes her mind and follows her heart and gets back together with Randy. So it's happier ending than Romeo and Juliet. But yeah, I'm okay with that.
That's a movie. Well, and also there's this scene at the beach before the party. That's when they first meet, right? Don't they first meet?
I think
doesn't he come up?
Right. She sees him and she's like checking him out.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if he sees her though.
I can't remember now.
And I feel like her friends, I can't remember if her friends think he's cute or not when he's standing there in a swimsuit and he's not looking punk or whatever. But yeah, you're right. There is a brief.
So there's this little moment that she, on her part. And then he arrives to this party. So it's like part of the magic.
Right.
It's like, I saw this hot guy at the beach and now he's here.
And that hot guy is Nicolas Cage.
Being Nicolas Cage.
Origin stories. Do you have anything you want to say? I was the one who suggested this movie, right? I think.
When I watched it, I realized I had watched it before.
Okay.
And I just didn't, again, I'm bad with like movie titles, title of a song, anything. I'm not going to remember it. So much I was like, wait, I've seen this before. So that was fun. My lover's a big Nicolas Cage fan. So there's a lot of Nicolas Cage movies I've seen that feel like a fever dream almost. When you watch enough Nicolas Cage, they all start to bleed together a little bit. I think. So, but this was really fun to see him at the very beginning of his career.
Right.
Yeah.
I first watched this movie a few years ago. And I think what happened was Ace and I were just like, let's watch a movie. And I think it was my turn to pick. And I was like, oh, here's this movie where it's really young Nicolas Cage. Let's watch it. And I was like, wait, that was really fun and kind of lovely. So we had discussed trying to do an episode that was a movie that was fun and lovely, because we hadn't done one of those in a while. And I suggested this one. And now we're here. There was a lot I had forgotten about, though. The whole fake out where you think the mom is going to have sex with the boy that her daughter has a crush on, but then it's revealed that it's actually the daughter and the boy having age-appropriate sex. I totally forgot that that was a fake out. And I was like, oh God, I've just brought another movie in to our pantheon where we have to talk about adults grooming minors. Maggie's going to be so... Because I promised that this was fun and light, but now there's this like added baggage. And warranted, the mom was still hitting on a child, so which is very inappropriate. And she wanted to have sex with him, which is also very inappropriate. But it didn't end up being quite as insidious as I was worried it was going to be.
And I think that that does speak to the way this film handles tropes. I think it is doing some work to subvert them. For example, Julie's dad and mom, which is weird. They like look the same age.
I was thinking the exact same thing. The mom looks exactly the same as the high schoolers.
Yeah. So I think she's meant to be younger, but I think is actually the same age as them. I'm not entirely suspending disbelief in that moment, but the movie's so fun. Like, I don't care. You know what I mean? Like, it's not really that important to the plot. But the dad, it's this trope of a dad that like tries to be cool, but he ends up actually being kind of creepy. I think that this film has a sort of self-awareness, though, that you don't often see when you have this archetype of a creepy dad. It's like, we know that he's a weirdo. The film knows that he's a weirdo, and we're going to laugh at him as an audience.
So when you say he's creepy, expand on that.
Well, I think in the very first scene we have with him, when we meet him, he hits on Julie's friend. He's like, if I was younger, I would blah, blah, blah.
Does he?
Yeah.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, that's our introduction to him. And I think he says that he says the friend, it's Stacy. And he's like, Stacy, if I was 10 years younger. And Julie's like, Dad. And then he's just, and then we know that his wife is like significantly younger than him, but 100% our introduction to him is him hitting on a teenage girl. That is
I believe you.
Friend's best friend. I have an eye and ear for this kind of stuff. Like, so the film overall is still playful and fun. It's not ignoring the fact that like this dude is like creepy weirdo. And also, I don't think it's asking us to excuse that behavior either. The mom who wants to, we know that it's weird and inappropriate that she's like trying to hook up with a teenage boy
who her daughter has confided in her she has a crush on.
Yeah.
So not only is she trying to have sex with a minor, she's trying to emotionally derail her daughter.
Yeah.
Which is diabolical.
I feel like media now, so many horrible, fucking stupid, empty, sterile, social media, TikTok fueled films and books out in the world now, where they are using tropes, but we aren't being asked as an audience to see them as tropes and to analyze them as tropes. And we're meant to sort of not do any media analysis and not consider that and just accept it as an actual story or something to aspire to. I think that's the word, is like, I think a lot of media now, they show us these tropes and we're expected to want to aspire to them in some way. Whereas I feel like this film is introducing these things, and we are meant to engage with it as something silly and made for our entertainment
Right.
rather than it being aspirational in some way.
Yeah. I think that's a good distinction because a lot of it is very silly, and even the movie does veer towards adults behaving badly or whatever. There is this air of silliness to it. And the movie's also like, we're not going to actually directly engage with violence. Like, we're not going to actually go down that road, which also preserves getting to be something silly or sweet or whatever. And to me, the specific magic of this movie that is kind of inexplicable is that you have this trope of these sort of star-crossed lovers, right? Teen lovers. And I don't know a lot about them as individuals. More so, I just know what they represent within the cultural milieu of the movie. I don't know like what their dreams are outside of just being together. All these things that in another movie I could see myself criticizing the movie for that, but here I don't. It doesn't bother me, and I feel just as invested in their situation and wanting them to succeed, even though them as individual characters don't feel particularly sketched out in a super meaningful way. So I was curious what your response is to that.
I think that it allows us to really just enjoy the film as being a fun representation of adolescence. Because I'm sorry, when you are a teenager, you are not a fully formed person.
Right.
And you are just trying on sort of like different identities. And you don't know who you are exactly. Your character is not sketched out yet. You're trying to figure that out. Even though we maybe don't know who Julie is outside of how she relates to her friends or her wanting to be with Randy and having to make these choices. But like, that is who she is. When you are a teenager and you're in love with somebody that your friends don't think is cool, that becomes your character. That becomes your life. And I don't mean this to like be dismissive or to say that teenagers don't have like character. That isn't true at all. It's just adolescents are so present in the moment and with their emotions and with what they love and who they hate and what they think isn't cool. And so I think that is why maybe them not having this in-depth characterization of all of these different characters strikes us as an audience as a superficial sort of representation. I think it actually makes it truer.
Yes. I love that you're saying this because I've already mentioned the montage that happens halfway through this movie. It's after Julie and Randy have gotten together, and it's set to, what's that song? You hear it all the time on like oldies radio. I'll stop the world and melt with you. That one. And it's set to that, and it is just them doing things together. And a lot of it is at night. And what I noticed is that so much of it is them doing things. What I'm about to say is going to sound so pretentious, but just stick with me. It's like them doing things that are just innately tied to capitalism because they're at the mall or at restaurants drinking branded Coca-Cola. They're doing things within this culture of commercialization and consumption and whatever, which feels like a critique to a certain degree of just the 80s. But they're still in the world. This is the world that they have offered to them. And so they're going to be in that world together. And I think what sells it, though, and what makes it so sweet is that you can be surrounded by the most crass consumerism ever. And that doesn't change the way you feel when two people look at each other and they clearly love each other. Or like, if you are that person, our current world is a great example of it. Like, late stage capitalist hellscape, that doesn't change the way I feel when I look at my lover. And I'm like, that is what we are to each other. And I feel like that little montage really captures that. And that's why I'm all in on it, ultimately.
Yeah, I love that analysis because I think too you can, in that sense, then say that Randy is sort of symbolizing some version of anti-capitalism that this friend group is now being presented with. And perhaps that is in part why her friends are like, this guy's fucking weird. Because he doesn't necessarily want to go to the mall. He's not talking about, oh, that food is fattening and, well, at least Diet Pepsi is diet. I remember like they have that conversation at the beach because they want to get French fries and someone's like, those are fattening. There's a lot of like fat phobia for sure.
Yeah.
In this movie. And I think Randy comes in and he's like, I don't know, dude, we could just go to the club and hang out. We don't need to go buy shit.
But they do still go to the mall also.
Yeah. But also it was the 80s.
Yeah. That's just like what you did.
That's part of it.
And they're at the food court eating together and laughing and being cute. And then her ex-boyfriend walks by and sees them and gives them the stink eye. And it's like, yeah, she doesn't need you. You think that because of where you're from, meaning the ex-boyfriend Tommy, you think that because of where you're from, you can give her a certain way of life that Randy can't give her. And it's like, no, actually, this is just the fucking world. And it's just about being together with people. So they can go to the mall.
I love that this movie too opens with them in the food court and just hanging out. Because even obviously in 1983, I wasn't even born yet. But like by the year 2000, malls were still a big deal.
Even when I was in middle school, I would have my mom drop me off at the mall.
Yeah.
And there was like a real food court, which doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah. No, there was like a real food court. There was a lot of fast food, but you still even had locally owned restaurants and stuff in there. And you would hang out and talk with your friends. And then so many things happen at the mall, like socially. But the first scene that I really laughed at in this movie happened within the first 5 minutes or so, because they're at the mall, they're having a good time, all the girls, and then they go down the escalator and Tommy's going up the escalator, and Julie didn't expect to see him there. They didn't plan to be at the mall, but everyone goes to the mall. So he's like, oh, what are you doing here? And they get to the bottom of the escalator and she's like, you didn't call me for 2 days. I don't love you anymore. Bye. Like there was no lead up. Like, should I break up with them? Should I blah, blah, blah. And I think also that's some foreshadowing of less seen as Julie as someone who is really practicing her autonomy, and which is so much a part of adolescence, right? And her parents, while weird, and her dad, while maybe questionable, she is given a lot of freedom to be herself and to explore the world. And I think that that results in her being able to be like, you know what? Actually, Tommy, I don't love you anymore. Bye. She doesn't consult her friends about that. She just breaks the fuck up with them. Yeah, she should. So anyway, I love that scene.
I love it too. This movie did make me really nostalgic for the food court specifically. A few months ago, for some reason, I was at our local mall on a Saturday, which I usually try to avoid because we only have one mall, so it can get busy. But I was like, I gotta go. And I was there, and there were so many teens there, and it made me so happy. But there's no food court. There are like 2 restaurants in there, one of which is a Chick-fil-A. But something I think is important about Randy as a character is that yes, I like this idea that he could represent this sort of anti-capitalist, anti-consumerist perspective, and that's what part of what her friends are bristling against. Though he does also allow himself to kind of become part of that world where it's like, sure, we can go to the food court on a date, and because I love you, that's all that matters. But he never holds where Julie comes from and the culture that she's used to against her when they are in their relationship. He makes one comment about it where he imitates the Valley Girl accent in a way that's supposed to hurt her feelings after she breaks up with him. He like goes to the door because he's like, hey, I want to see you. And she breaks up with him. And then he like, I don't remember what he says, but he does the like, and you're like so dumb. You know, he doesn't call her dumb, but he uses the affect. And I was like, that's really interesting that using this culture against her, it doesn't become a thing until he himself has been hurt. And then it's understandable why he's lashing out. And so that like makes me like him when they're together. You know, she's not pressuring him to change and become a Valley guy. And he also isn't pressuring her to not be a Valley girl anymore. It's the rest of the world that's obsessed with that.
I think too, in that moment when he does use the affect in speaking to her in order to hurt her, it's because he knows that she's breaking up with him because she's decided that what the world thinks about him and her is more important. She is breaking up with him because of where he came from, because of how he talks, because of how he dresses. So he's like, well, I can do that too then. I can hurt you in that same way. But then, you know, and then we get like where he's like sleeping in the front yard.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about this because it does get into dicey territory.
I'm still not mad at it.
But I'm not, yeah.
I honestly not, because it's supposed to be silly. We know it.
Yeah. Because I was thinking about this as I was driving here. It's kind of stalker-ish, but I wouldn't say he stalks her. I don't know. I was trying to think of what word I would use to describe it, and to call it stalking feels too extreme. And I think part of that is maybe because we know that Julie actually does love him.
Yes.
It's not like she's not interested and he wears her down so much that she finally capitulates. I still don't think it's necessarily appropriate what he does. Because, yeah, he sleeps on her front lawn after she's broken up with him. And then she's in a car that's like about to drive away with her friends. And he gets in and she yells at him to get... See, this interaction is so funny to me because he gets in and she's like, get out, Randy. And he says, I love you. And then she says, get out. And then he does. But just that back and forth of get out, I love you, get out. And then he does. Like, it's comical. And then there's like one more. Oh, they're at the movie theater and he's working there. And he's ripping tickets. And it's not clear if he's just always worked there or he knows that they go there, so he got a job there. It's a sequence of things where he's showing up where she is. And
very funny.
And it's funny.
And it's very Nicolas Cage.
And it's I think that's also part of it, is it's just on par with the kind of zaniness that we expect from Nicolas Cage. But I really do think it comes down to the movie having this very clear point of view of we know where Julie's heart is.
Mm-hmm.
Because I recently... Have you seen Dead Poets Society?
Mm-hmm.
I recently showed it to Ace for the first time. He had never seen it. And that was a movie I watched all the time as a kid and hadn't watched in many years. And I'm thinking specifically of the subplot with the Knox character who has the crush on the girl. Do you know what I'm talking about? Mm-hmm. The way Robin Williams' whole carpe diem philosophy inspires him is that he's like, oh, I'm going to pursue this girl I have a crush on. In my opinion, you just cut that whole subplot out of the movie and it instantly becomes better. Because the way this crush functions is he just sees this girl and is immediately like, I'm in love with her. I want to marry her. And these are all high schoolers. But it's that thing of she has a boyfriend who is characterized as kind of a dick, but she's not interested in him. But he keeps being like, but I'm interested in you. And if you just gave me a shot, I think we could make this work. And so he keeps showing up at these places to wear her down and try to win her over. And then at the very end, she's like, okay, fine. While she literally calls him infuriating. She's like, okay, fine, you're infuriating, but I guess we can go to this play and hold hands and maybe now I'll be your girlfriend. That is distinctly different than the dynamic here between Julie and Randy, even though Randy is kind of engaging in a similar style of, I'm just going to show up to make you notice me in hopes that things will work out in my way.
That's a good comparison. Yeah. And I agree. I totally agree. It's because we know where her heart is. And that's why we can just see it as something silly. Like he's just popping up to be like, hey, I'm still here whenever you're ready. Whenever you're ready, I still love you. You know?
Mm-hmm. Julie has this conversation with her dad where she's like, I really want to be with Randy, but my friends don't like him. And that is really bringing me down. And I don't remember exactly what her dad says, but I feel like his advice was fine. It was basically like, follow your heart. Mm-hmm. And then the next scene, to sort of a comical degree, is her being like, I'm going to break up with him. Even though she just admitted that that's not what her heart wants. So we know that she is not following her own desire. And then she also, in that interim period, gets back together with her shitty ex-boyfriend, who we know is like a sleaze bag, because the second she broke up with him, he almost had sex with her friend and was a dick and clearly just thinks of Julie as this thing to possess. So when I'm comparing the Nick Cage antics of the last act of this movie to everything about Tommy, I'm like, I'm going to take the Nick Cage sleeping on my front lawn over this guy who has like date rapist vibes.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And again, and I feel like we can kind of take it back to what I was saying about how I think this movie is self-aware enough to know that it is acting out something that isn't meant to be real. I can excuse Nicolas Cage's behavior because we know that it's not meant to actually emulate something happening in the real world. It's a story that we're being told for entertainment purposes.
Right.
So, yeah, you just get to enjoy Nick Cage being a weirdo.
Yeah. He's a total goofball in this movie. His presence as an actor, but then also the character of Randy, is sort of the platonic ideal of what your high school boyfriend should be. Just like a little goofball who is nice to you and is maybe a little kooky.
And I think it's a relatable storyline of having to choose between your friends and like someone who your friends maybe don't like understand or fully approve of, like why you would be with them. You're like, well, I just like them. And in this case, her friends are being assholes,
right,
about it. There's no reason for her to not be with Randy. He's actually nice to her and they would rather her date the asshole. But again, this isn't meant to be like a real world scenario. In the real world, usually if none of your friends like the person you're dating, you shouldn't be
there's
with
a good
them.
reason why none of them like him. Yeah.
That's a huge red flag.
So I was thinking about other sort of examples of this kind of teen star-crossed lover movies. And I feel like the thing in this movie that's keeping them apart reads as quite superficial. But when you think about it, it is, I guess, an issue of class. We don't see Randy's home life at all. We never meet his parents. We don't see where he lives. It's a culture clash that at least feels a little bit class coded to me. But it still mostly is just low stakes.
Mm-hmm.
is the right word. And maybe not superficial, more low stakes. But I don't know. The first thing that's popping into my mind is The Notebook and other Nicholas Sparks things, where the thing keeping these people apart is also often class related. That's very common in romance media. But it's like he's the boy from the wrong side of the tracks, but also he's traumatized by his abusive father, and she is stifled because her rich daddy, he's heartbroken that she would dare to have sex with a boy who like works in a car shop. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
It's just,
Yeah.
it's so much. And there's this intentional desire to ramp up the stakes as a way to make the love story seem more profound or whatever. But there's something about, I agree with what you're saying, where there's a heightenedness to this movie that makes it clear it's not aiming for social realism in its aesthetic or narrative choices. But there is something about the low stakes nature of the thing driving them apart that does feel more rooted in reality than something like Nicholas Sparks. And I find that interesting.
Yeah. No, I agree. I actually think that what is forcing them apart is more than a little classism.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we don't really know a lot about his home life. The movie makes it very clear that he's like a punk. If we want to talk about the social realities of like what was happening in the punk scene, what the punk scene was trying to do, right? It was anti-consumerism, anti-capitalist. It was anarchic. Even if the storyline is not meant to represent reality, the story itself does still feel very much rooted in real social consequences of what you represent, depending on where you come from, or even what identity you decide to take on for yourself. In this case, he's like punk,
right?
But it's a very like clean punk. Like I had a hard time, but that's part of why I'm like, it doesn't feel that real to me, because I'm like, okay, this is just a trope of the punk guy. This does not feel gritty and real by any means,
right?
But I didn't need it to be.
And part of the whole, we never see his home life, we don't know anything about his parents, I was like, I suspect that this is maybe just a budget thing. Like, we just didn't have the budget to add more characters and add new locations and design, new sets or whatever. So they were just like, oh, who cares? Like, but then that also keeps it centered on Julie, and Julie gets crowned prom queen at the end of this movie. Her and Tommy, they're like prom king and queen, and for much of her life, like, that has really meant something. And I think in a lot of high school social strata, no matter where you live, that still means something. And so for her to be like, maybe this doesn't mean what I thought it did, and reject it, is ubiquitous experience.
But kind of in line with that, like, I don't think the movie's like, these things aren't important. And what Julie has learned is that high school doesn't matter, and what happens in high school doesn't matter. It's like, no, I think what we've learned is that developing your own sense of autonomy and agency is really, really important. And so much of that happens in high school.
Right.
And I get irritated when media pretends what happened in high school doesn't matter. It's true to an extent, sure, but your brain is forming, making little synaptic connections and shit like that at that time.
And the movie is, I think, fundamentally optimistic about the growth that can happen to a person in high school. It's not like, oh, high school just is hell. It's hard, obviously. There's the scene in the middle when Julie's having a sleepover with her friends, and she's still with Randy at that point. It's when they're going through the mom's lingerie drawer and like, ooh. And their friends are making fun of her for being with Randy. Like the idea that she would be attracted to him. And they're asking her if they've had sex and they haven't. And there's this really effective moment when the friends, like, they stop talking or they walk away or whatever, and Julie's just sitting on the bed and the camera just stays on her face as she looks sad. And that 5-second moment of silence with just her eyes and her face is so much more telling, I think, of the difficulties of being an adolescent in high school than having her or Randy or whoever go on this 5-minute diatribe about like high school is hell and like here's all the ways I misunderstood and da 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 da. It like understands that heaviness in these private or silent moments, and becoming an adult is understanding that those moments just happen. But then it ends like with this optimistic moment of they've hijacked the limo that Tommy got and they're going to the Sheraton, probably to bang, and on the free hotel room that Tommy presumptively booked without consulting her, which is also incredibly creepy. But they're like, the driver's like, to the Sheraton? And they're like, sure. And they're just smiling so big, and it's so hopeful. And the movie doesn't need to be winky about like, yeah, but they're probably not gonna last. It doesn't even need to get into that conversation, because me watching it, I'm like, yeah, they probably didn't last, but who knows? Who am I to say? And I just think it's nice that the movie is comfortable with that type of arc and doesn't feel the need to undercut it at all. It's like, we can just end on this moment of euphoria, and that's enough.
This movie just, I think it just achieves what it set out to do.
Right.
Ultimately, it's not trying to do anything more than it's capable of doing, and it's not pretending like it was deeper or more. Anyway, I'm just thinking about Wuthering Heights. That was a movie that was trying too hard and also not trying hard enough in some ways. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to get in the whole conversation about it again, but like, this movie was just like, this is what it is. This is a genre that we're writing into.
This is the moment in time we're interested in, both culturally, but then also within the lives of these characters.
Yeah. Yeah. It feels like a time capsule in some ways. That's really wonderful.
I was also thinking about just the archetypes of characters in teen movies. And I was thinking about this more so with Randy, but I think you could also bring Julie into this conversation too, because I'll start with Randy. When I think of the archetypes of these male romantic heroes in movies that are about teens, for teens, they often sort of fall into either tortured, emotionally closed off, like kind of guy, like I was talking about earlier with Nicholas Sparks, or you have like the jock who learns his lesson and softens. And I was like, what are the other ones? Because Randy Randy feels like he's not really an archetype, which is compelling to me. Yes, he's punk, but he's kind of this soft version of punk. He seems pretty emotionally well adjusted, at least until she breaks up with him. But then it's understandable that he's upset. I was curious if you had thoughts on that, like thinking more broadly about this canon.
I mean, to see a movie, especially in the early 80s, so some time ago, represent like a cis heteronormative relationship in which the man is kind to his girlfriend. There truly are. I mean, we talked about, you know, like him sleeping in his front yard, like showing up at places. But there's nuance there in that we know that she actually loves him, blah, blah, blah. We've talked about that. Feels, even now, relatively rare to see. I don't know if that's exactly answering your question, but it's where my mind went. What I was actually thinking about is Sorry Baby.
Okay.
Which is a phenomenal film if you haven't seen it. But in it, our protagonist, who is a woman, she has experienced trauma. And there's like this neighbor boy who at first, and honestly, throughout almost the entire movie, seems very soft, very sweet. I was like kind of rooting for him. And then in the very last scene, it's not that he did anything like purposely or even very like overtly cruel, but he shows his hand as a man who still sort of expects her as a woman to change her mind eventually about what she wants.
And is this when they're talking about having kids?
This is, yeah, when they're in the bath. And I think that's like the last scene with him. And I'm like, fuck. And it felt very true and very real. And so I thought about that in comparison to like Randy, who he didn't meet her and try to save her from herself. He's not trying to save her from herself, save her from her friends, save her from the way she talks, the way she dresses. He just likes her the way that she is. And I think so often, especially in a film that is acting in the realm of like social realism, we don't get to see that kind of representation because it's oftentimes not the reality, where a man is truly as understanding and kind and accepting of his partner as he represents himself. And it's always such a letdown. So part of the reason why I've been saying so much that like it's not meant to represent the real world, I think, is because of that in part. And not that like, oh, all men are hashtag not all men. Okay, fucking sure. Like, I'm married to a man. And I can't imagine anybody listening to this podcast thinks that, but you just never know,
right,
who's going to come across. If you get it, you get it. If you don't, I don't know what to tell you.
I think this point you bring up is helpful, though. What you're saying about like social realism and a man who just isn't trying to save the woman from herself. Or sometimes we have this dynamic we see in fiction where it's like the woman trying to save the man from himself because he's so emotionally closed off or like not willing to deal with his trauma or whatever. And that's also exhausting to watch over and over and over. So the way the film circumvents all that was refreshing.
Yeah.
And I think it's something that makes it stand out, even as other movies from this era are perhaps more well known than this one. And then similarly with Julie, like, she is this Valley Girl archetype, but the movie also isn't trying to save her from herself in the sense that she must shed this entire cultural identity. And it's really interesting to me that this movie comes out a decade before Clueless does. And I know Clueless is set in Beverly Hills, not the Valley, but except for that scene when they go to the Valley and then she gets mugged. But it's kind of a similar, though, sort of like airhead, materialistic, but well-meaning girl navigating love and life, whatever. And it's
also a loose Shakespeare retelling?
Jane Austen.
Oh, Jane Austen.
Emma.
Yeah.
Emma.
I was like,
yes.
Shakespeare's not right, but okay. Yeah. So it has source text.
But there is that amazing line when she quotes, I think it's Hamlet. And someone's like, what's that? Where'd you read that? And she's like, it's in Cliff's Notes. But the point I'm making is that it's interesting to me that this movie comes out like a decade before Clueless does. And Clueless has risen to the top culturally as this very nuanced and humane depiction of this specific subculture and a girl who is grappling with it. I don't want to take any flowers away from Clueless because I love Clueless, but I think this movie maybe deserves a little more for doing a similar thing first.
Yeah. I like that comparison. That makes total sense to me.
Anything else about Valley Girl you want to add?
I don't think so.
What does this movie make you want to tell your younger self?
It makes me want to tell my younger self that it's just like fine. I mean, to be the person that you are and to like the things you like. as a teenager, there are certain things that you feel like you should like that you don't, especially when you take into account what identity you've kind of like chosen for yourself at that time. But you can listen to whatever kind of music you want or watch whatever kind of movies you want. And the people that like you are going to like you, and people that don't aren't. And fuck them. And I think that I kind of lived into that to a degree, but not without the anxiety of secretly wishing that just every single person in the world would like me. You know, that just was never going to happen.
That's nice. I would tell my younger self that what matters most is that he treats you right. Because I had some crushes on boys who were not nice. But the excitement of having a crush is it's this power that's beyond your control. And this movie is just like, here's a nice guy. In the normal way, not in the capital N, capital G way. The importance of that cannot be understated, is that your partner treats you well.
Yeah. It's not hard to just like be a nice person.
Right. Well, thank you for listening. Please rate, review, subscribe. 5-star ratings are helpful for us. We would really appreciate that. Turn on post notifications. That way you won't miss an episode, especially because we're just flying by the seats of our pants here, and our upload schedule is quite sporadic at the moment, which is fine.
It's okay.
Fine by me. We will be back at least in August. Will we be back in June?
I mean, there are like a couple days where I'll be here. If we just really have to line it up perfectly.
Okay.
But I think we can do it.
It's okay. Just for listeners' sake, we will be back.
We will be back.
Alrighty.
That's all.
That's all?
I think so.
Okay. I was trying to think of a Valley Girl line, but I can't come up with one.
Just imagine one in your head, you guys.
Just imagine Nicolas Cage in a vest with no shirt.
And a tie.
And exposed chest hair.
And his hair kind of feathery. Yep. Well, we're going to leave you with that.
There you go. Bye.
Bye.